Jonathan Lee Riches investigates. What in the world are these two up to? Chad Daybell, Lori Vallow Daybell. It seems they might be communicating with each other right now. Talking to each other. Chad Daybell, currently in the county jail. Lori Vallow Daybell, currently in Idaho Department of Correction custody. And it seems like they've been talking and communicating with each other. I'm going to share with you a recent court motion. They're not prohibited from speaking to one another. I'm shocked by this. That two people who are involved with a very egregious crime, one who is facing the death penalty, two who faced the death penalty but didn't get the death penalty, serving life in prison. And how in the world are they able to communicate with one another and be able to talk, send letters, telephone calls, maybe at the discretion of the jails? What in the world? Check this motion out right here. I'm going to read this to you. Check it out. Okay, this is the state of Idaho versus Chad Daybell. On January 19, 2023, a motion was heard in Lori Vallow Daybell's case, Fremont County case number CR 22-211624, requesting the defendants be allowed to meet with their respective counsel present for a strategy session. At the time the motion was heard, the cases were still joined for trial, so all parties were heard on the motion. This court denied the motion, finding Idaho Rule 507 would only be applicable for mediation, which it was not occurring, concerns about the potential for the defense attorneys to become witnesses and security of the parties. The court did not specifically enter any order restricting and or prohibiting communication between the defendants at that time. The state is unaware of any additional orders put in place by this court addressing the defendants' contact with each other or restrictions regarding the contact. Since the entry of the order on the co-defendant's motion for a joint strategy session, defendant Vallow Daybell has been found guilty of all charges and was subsequently sentenced to life in prison on July 31st, 2023. At the time of her sentencing, the court transferred custody of defendant Vallow Daybell to the Idaho Department of Corrections, and in doing so, relinquished jurisdiction over her and her case with the exception of some limited purposes, such as hearing a Rule 35. The state is seeking an order finding and or clarifying that there are currently no restrictions in place by this court in the form of a no contact order or otherwise prohibiting contact between the defendant and defendant Vallow Daybell. If such an order was in existence, the state would seek clarification as to whether it would still be applicable to defendant Vallow Daybell, since the court has relinquished jurisdiction over her and her case for most purposes, including the ability to restrict her contact with others. Respectfully submitted, the prosecutors. What is going on here? They communicating or not? Are they allowed or not? They could write each other love letters, dirty letters. They could share each other's secrets. They could tell each other things they don't want people to know. Or how are they getting away with it? Well, technically, in most prisons and jails, a defendant is allowed to talk to another defendant when it comes to court-related things. They were co-defendants, right? Severed cases. But you would think that maybe the prisons allow them to speak. But they're using that as an opportunity to speak besides the case. Other stuff. I wonder how they are. How do they feel about each other? Do you think they still love each other? Do you think Lori Vallow Daybell is telling Chad that, strategy, law talk, or telling him, to keep fighting, or maybe knocking some sense into him, tell him to plead guilty? Remember, he's facing the death penalty, Mr. Daybell. Lori didn't get it. Or are they talking about stuff? Now, if they are communicating, letters are open, right? I don't think you can seal letters in jail going out. I think the jail can read it. So they'll be seeing it. Lest there's, I don't know the policies in the Idaho Department of Corrections in reference to inmates writing other inmates, or county jails in Idaho. County jail writing to a state inmate. How does that work? Does anyone know how that works? Maybe they're not even writing to each other. But I think based off that motion that I shared with all of you, it seems like they want clarification because they might know that they've been communicating. How do you feel about that? Chad and Lori possibly communicating with each other. Subscribe to my channel, hit the notification button. I wanted to share that apparently they're allowed to do it. I guess it's up to the prisons and the jails. We'll see more about this. We'll see if more comes out of this. I wanted to share that information. Chad Daybell, Lori Vallow Daybell. Chad goes on trial. I was at the Lori Vallow Daybell trial. Guilty. Serving the rest of her life in prison. Rightfully so. Chad Daybell's next. I heard the stories. I heard the testimony by the detectives. The egregious, how those two children were found on the property is shocking to the core. It's probably why Chad Daybell's facing the death penalty. We'll talk soon. Stay tuned.